The dust is still settling over Utah's new political boundaries. The maps, which sparked major controversy, determine the races and candidates we get to vote for over the next decade.
Yeah, and the KSL investigators immediately requested emails sent to state lawmakers by many of you, their constituents. What we got was more than 3,700 emails, which begs a question here. Did lawmakers actually listen? Well, tonight we sort through the redistricting runaround.
You have created a firestorm of opposition by treating the voters of Utah with disrespect.
Frustration reached a fever pitch last November.
There has not been adequate time for the public to both view these maps and comment on the committee's decisions.
As Utah's legislative redistricting committee went from this,
we're going to take a good hard look at them,
to this.
House Bill 2004 passes this body.
And here we are, the final congressional district map that looks nothing like any of the options the newly formed Independent Redistricting Commission put forward.
I don't think it's fair to say that you guys didn't come out and listen. I just don't know that you listened well.
The KSL investigators wanted to know what Utahns were asking for and were they listened to? So we joined forces with the Deseret News and asked for legislative emails. It cost us more than $1,700 to finally get them. And the overwhelming message was this: we want you to consider and pass maps presented by the Independent Redistricting Commission.
It provides accountability to the redistricting process.
And here's what constituents said.
As a voter in a rural area, I'm entirely uncomfortable with my vote being used to dilute the power of another.
And even some government entities.
We need representation that understands the diversity of this area.
All these emails are from the week of October 25th through November 8th. That's when proposed maps were unveiled through the final vote. And after sifting through more than 3,700 emails, here's what we found. 930 people wrote saying that the independent maps should be adopted or that they did not like the lawmakers map. That includes Paul Andrews from Ivins.
And the legislature just decided to gerrymander even further than they had in the past.
I don't trust anything called independent.
Compare that to 11 people.
Maximize Republican representation in government.
Who wrote in praising the map lawmakers picked.
2 districts for Salt Lake County should be the goal.
And the feedback isn't much different on the map website.
They don't have to pay attention to voters, I guess is their opinion.
Most of the 900 plus comments did not like what the legislative committee drew up.
Do you think of things differently, or do you say, you know what, we've been looking at this stuff for weeks, for months, we know this better than you do?
I don't think I can say we know it better.
State Senator Scott Sandel insists they listened. Their goal was equal representation.
Try to create districts that were numerically even and rural-urban split with a political divide in them.
Sandel says rural Utah wanted a voice. He claims dividing those voters into 4 districts is exactly what rural voters wanted, rather than their own district.
I never once had a constituent from rural Utah express that to me.
We'll take a listen to what one Juab County commissioner had to say at a public meeting on the legislative listening tour.
And Juab County does not want to be lumped in with anything north of Santaquin. Our voice as a rural Utah becomes insignificant and does not count.
And there are more. We found this study by a New York University professor in those emails KSL obtained. 52 mayors across the state were contacted and asked what they would like to see included or excluded from their district. And most of them said the same thing: keep the big city out of rural areas and vice versa.
And I would rather have our area be represented by the people that live here.
Former Nibley Mayor Sean Dustin, a Republican, was one of the voices in this study. He says aside from diluting the rural voice, putting rural Utah in all districts could be problematic when those interests are at odds with the urban ones, like rehabilitating the Great Salt Lake.
I don't see how the maps that were drawn are going to help to resolve those conflicts. They're just going to exacerbate them.
And it appears that they didn't reflect any of the input that we had given them.
Independent Redistricting Commission Chair Rex Facer says he was hopeful lawmakers would not revert back to business as usual.
I mean, you put forth all this work. Here's my blood, sweat, and tears for the last, 8 to 10 months. Here it is. Yeah, we're not interested in that. And then with no explanation why. I think we...
Sure, although I think we all know the explanation why. The explanation why, it was politics. It was all about, making sure that the greatest political advantage would be had by those who are in legislative power.
So, what's the impact? BYU political science professor Chris Karpowitz warns if the redistricting process leaves voters feeling unheard, it could weaken future political involvement.
What it causes is an increase in cynicism or an increase in disillusionment.
And in a supermajority state, it can be harder to keep lawmakers accountable to the people.
If they can insulate their party's success, then they may feel less inclined to need to follow the will of the voters.
Still feeling like you haven't been heard? Karpowicz says, don't give up.
Continue to be vigilant on this because accountability for elected officials is a key part of the process.
Maybe key, but accountability may take a form of a lawsuit here. Better Boundaries, who spearheaded the independent commission, is exploring that, similar to lawsuits in states like North Carolina, where a judge ordered maps to be redrawn. When we asked Sandel about the independent commission's role in the future, he said, we have yet to see if it has any value in the redistricting process.